Hi, my name is Boris Georgiev, and for the purpose of this project, I decided to visit the Museum of Florida History, which is part of Florida Department of State Division of Cultural Affairs. It was opened in 1977, so next year it's going to be its 40th anniversary. Um, the museum is open daily until 4:30. It is also open 363 days of the year. And in case you're wondering, yes, Christmas and Thanksgiving are the 2 days which is not open. Other than that, it's always open. It's also free of charge. The physical location is 500 Brunel Street, Tallahassee, Florida, which is right here in downtown. It's just a short walk away from campus. Um, so it's very easily accessible and it doesn't cost you anything. For example, I have a 2.5 hour break between classes one of the days in the week, so I decided to utilize that time and take a short walk. I had just enough time to walk over there, see what the museum has to offer, and then walk back and make it in time for my next class. So the museum showcases past and present cultures of Florida, and it attempts to promote knowledge and appreciation of its Florida heritage. So it begins with Florida's first people, which were the Palo Indians. They lived here about 12,000 years ago, um, followed by the Archaic Indians, which lived right after them 9,000 years ago. Um, so it's very interesting to see the representation of these people, having that they lived such a long time ago. It was interesting to see their ways, um, the technology they used, some of the like cultural practices, for example, their burial services, which they did have, like even though they lived such a long time ago. Um, then the exhibition continues to show what the Indian tribes that lived here before the Spanish came, so around the 1500s, right before the Spanish got here, uh, what their lives looked like. Um, then it continues on with the exhibition called Forever Change, and that is basically it represents the clash of the two cultures, so the tribe culture of the Indians and the Spanish and the French. Um, then the next exhibition is the Spanish shipwrecks. So basically, this has to deal with, as we know, a big motivation for the Spanish to come on this side of the world uh, was to look for natural resources. And even though they didn't find any in Florida, they did use it for that purpose. Um, the ships that went to Mexico and Latin America and were filled with gold and natural resources used Florida as kind of like, you can say, I call it a rest stop. So they use Florida to stop off, refuel, and continue on their path to Spain. And a lot of the times, due to lack of technology, of tracking technology, a lot of the ships crashed, some in the Bermuda Triangle, uh, some just in the middle of the ocean, and they were never found until recently. So as those ships started to come up uh, in recent years, uh, some of them are represented in this museum. So they're basically like a huge time capsule of what those ships look like, and they actually contain a lot more than just the natural resources. So you can kind of see what was important back then, what mattered really. The rest of the exhibition kind of follows Florida in the Civil War. There's also a citrus packaging house, which is very funny. Like it or not, I mean, I guess citruses are a big portion of Florida uh, today and in the recent history. There's also early transportation and tourism section. So, for example, there's a few Model Ts, which was really cool to see, as well as what was called tin canning. And I've never seen one in person, but it really does look like a tin can. So that was cool to see. Um, And the very last exhibition is for the Remembers World War II, which, I mean, as we know, we weren't directly involved in World War II, but it just documents the state's response to the war, including patriotic activities here and the establishment of military training bases throughout the state. So some of the highlights and takeaways for me, and why did I choose this attraction? So as I said, it's easily accessible, it's free, and even though I consider myself a kind of a well-informed person, it gave me the opportunity to learn a little bit more about Florida history. Some of the highlights in the archaic section, in the section for the archaic Indians, there was a huge skeleton of the mastodon, which is kind of like the cousin of the mammoth, which is a little bit more well-known animal. And those two are basically the ancestors of the modern-day elephant. So there was a huge skeleton of a mastodon, real life sites. So it was very nice. Also, in the same section of the archaic Indians, there was they showed how they used to carve out a canoe. So that was very interesting. Basically, documented all the steps, how to make a canoe. It was also really interesting to see the type of technology those very early Indians had back in the day. We tend to think of technology as something that we invented in the modern world, but that's definitely not the case, because as long as there was humans here, there was technology, whether that was the simple creation of a knife or anything else. That's a type of technology as well. And also one of the takeaways was kind of like in a way, the misrepresentation of the Indians. So they were, even though colonialism is over, we tend to think of their issues as kind of like over because colonialism is over, but that's definitely not the case. And there's really no representation of what the Indians are nowadays, where they live, what their issues are, and there's definitely some issues there that could be worked on, but there is definitely no representation of that. So I found that a little odd. So that's my takeaways, my experience there. I would recommend visiting it. It gives you an opportunity to learn a little bit more about the state's history.